sitting down at your table.
There we go. Frank's going to tell us a little bit about the Buchanan place and the roads and everything. Want to go ahead?
Right up here, in the area about where the cat was, is where the house stood, wasn't it? And it faced west out that way, and the road went north and south this way. And the old dirt road, I don't know whether it had a number on it or not, but it was just established by usage from Davenport out through this area and up to Fruitland and Hunters and Sedonia, wherever. And Davenport wasn't there when my grandfather and mother and her older sister came there first in 1884. Mother was 4 years old and her Annie was 2 years older, coming from Santa Rosa, California. And they bought a place 2 miles north of Davenport, about 1 mile west of the present highway. That was the route, the old road at that time, and there was nothing there at Davenport at the time. In 1884, just Cottonwood Springs. They had to go to Spokane Falls or Sprague to do their shopping twice a year, the spring and the fall, to get supplies. And they bought sugar in barrels, which is brown sugar, and they bought flour in barrels, and they bought bolts of cloth for their clothing, and you couldn't buy a man's shirt or underwear. They made their own men's underwear out of flannel, and you could buy Levi pants or corduroys, I think, at that time too, but you couldn't buy a man's shirt. And they knit their own socks. He was from Germany, West Germany. They knit their own socks and their own mittens and whatever they could make, in their own caps, whatever they could make that way. And in 1884 there was nothing there in Davenport, only Cottonwood Springs, and Granddad bought somebody out that had this homestead and had built a lumber house on it with the footboards standing straight up and down, and it had 2 rooms downstairs, and I think it was, and it had an upstairs, maybe a story and a half house. Anyway, they had a little barn and a little granary, and this big spring on the place, which was choice, and it never had failed. And the threshers later on, the steam threshers, came and hauled water for miles to the thresher from that spring. And the water wagon, they would come with a water wagon with a 4-horse team and had a thresher pump on the thing, and they would pump that thing full of water, the water tank, and go to the thresher to feed the steam engine. And this is the way it was. But in 1884, there was nothing in the country except the Fort Spokane was there. The government had built Fort Spokane out where the bridge is now, just south of the bridge, at the mouth of the Spokane River. They had built Fort Spokane, and they had their own sawmill that they sawed the lumber to build the fort with, and the fort was built to secure the safety of the settlers, which they never had to do, but nevertheless the fort was there. And then they had some pioneer sawmills in the country. Deep Creek was one of the earliest places also. It was settled. They had a doctor at Deep Creek. They had a few things around the country, and people had bought lumber from a few pioneer sawmills, and maybe they bought them got some lumber from the fort early too. I don't know where the lumber came from, but in 10 years, less than 10 years, the country is being settled up, and Davenport became a settlement, and they named it Davenport. And I don't know why they did that. Maybe some people from the Middle West were from Davenport, Iowa. I don't know just why they named it Davenport. There was Davenport is a family name in some places, but I don't know of anybody named Davenport in early days. But there was a lot of my grandfather's family that came here from West Germany after he did, and they immediately established the Lutheran Church, and then the Presbyterian was one of the earlier churches, and the Methodist, and that my grandmother was from Missouri, and she was what they called the South Methodist, or they had a Wesleyan Methodist that some of the old timers that came from the Middle West, they belonged to the Wesleyan Methodist. But the churches were one of the first things that was established, and they built quite a little on the background, and they were very faithful to go every Sunday and worship in their religions. And the Methodist and the Presbyterian didn't have enough people for the congregation, so they went together, and all the people went to they held in the same building. They held Methodist services one week, and the next week they held Presbyterian services. And the German Lutheran, all that my granddad was he they had all the men sitting on one side and the women on the other, and they sang those old Lutheran hymns. Grandpa and the Buck family were all musical, and he liked the Methodist hymnals and that so much better. He quit going to the Lutheran church and went with my grandmother and the Methodist, and they all liked to sing.
Hey,
so,
Frank, when did the Buchanans move out here?
I think the Buchanans moved here. They probably come from Minnesota with the Littles, with his in-laws. They came from Minnesota, and they were interested in timber and sawmilling. And they came here in the 1800 someplace, or not later than 1900. And the Larsons were Danes, and they came here in 1900 from Minnesota. And the Depots, they lived here. They were from Minnesota. They were neighbors to Littles back in Minnesota. And so the communities had usually had one or two neighboring families that participated in coming west at the same time. So what we're looking at now is some of the old trees that were set out here by the Grandpa Buchanan, who came here and had this homestead, as far as I know, from the first. And these old weeping willow trees are probably from the Middle West also. They're not native of this country. And he built a nice house looking west out there, and we're on the north side of the creek. And it faced the road. On the other side they had a barn, and the road was a dirt road, went to Davenport. And it was just built, established by general use. So going through the trees, any place that was the easiest place to get through without any grading. And my father, H. Stiles, and I, Frank, was in Colville along in the 1930s. or late 30s or sometime there. And we saw an old man that had taught school in Fruitland in early days. And they saw each other on the street, and he ran the abstract office in Colville. So when they met again on the street by old man Sachs, he said, come in here. He says, I want to talk to you. So we went into a place right there where the key bank is located right now in Colville. It was
Back over to where the homestead was. We took a little break there.
the old house stood right here, wasn't it? Right in here?
Yeah, that was where the old basement foundation was.
Yeah, and the porch was out there. This is under the back side of the house where they had a kitchen and a pantry and the dining room here on the south side. There's a bedroom over here. I don't know whether more than that or not, but on the front they had a big front room, and it was more or less for meeting the general public, you know, because this was kind of a showcase place, and they had big. I think there was another room off the side, maybe, but they had windows on this side, on the south side, on the front, and it was the veranda, about an 8-foot porch, and the big window was in front with a little square colored glass, you know, around on the top. And they had a kind of a transom, in those days they had a kind of a transom window above the door, you know, where they had a window above the door with colored glass and stuff. I think they call it the transom window, you know, up above there. And it was kind of a nice place, you know. And when the sun would set in the west, it would shine in into this window and through the south and west in the afternoon, you see. And this is all sunny. The dining room was sunny, the kitchen was sunny, and the pantry over here, as I remember. They had a bedroom here, might have had 2 bedrooms. Then the upstairs, you come off of the dining room and into the front room or the parlor, whatever. And then there was a stairway went up, coming this way, went upstairs, and that was all bedrooms. And I don't know how many bedrooms there was up there. But anyway, this is where the school teacher usually stayed. Usually, when they taught school up here at the Buchanan School, about less than a quarter of a mile away up here. And that was just off of the schoolhouse, just off of Buchanan's property on a piece the state had there, where they built the school, and the old foundation is still there.
We can walk up there and stuff.
Yeah.
You said you were just sitting here when you were a little boy, and there was the main road was right out here in front.
The main road to Davenport was built by public usage, going from Davenport to Fruitland, Hunters, Sidonia, and all those places up the river. And then there was another road that went along the riverbank down to serve a bunch of little towns on the river that were fruit farms and stuff. And Peach was down there, and they raised peaches at Crest, or Peach. And Jerome, they had strawberries and peaches and apricots and stuff down there they sold. And that river road run down on the river. And there's a community that was separate from this community. This was higher up on the higher elevation. This went straight through to Davenport, across the Spokane River at the Detillion Bridge, where they kept the travel there overnight. You only went as far as the Detillion Bridge. You could stay all night there, and they keep your team or your horse or whatever. You could stay there and go on into Davenport. And that was the end of the mail stage route in early times, they'd come out to the Tillion Bridge in Davenport to carry the mail out there. And then there was somebody else come down from the north and would pick up the mail there at the Tillion Bridge and deliver their mail going out and bring that mail coming back, and they'd haul passengers also to Davenport or on the Spokane so they could get on into Davenport and then take another stage to Spokane or wherever they wanted to go. But they get to Davenport and the train run through Davenport and they could go on the train either direction, and that was the Northern Pacific. And they also had other means of transportation to Spokane, I suppose, but the mail went on the train after it got to Davenport, I'm pretty sure.
And they used to come up here. Let's walk out to the road.
Yeah.
This is the...
Okay. Now this old house faced the road. Now this locust tree may not have been there at the time, but there was trees out in the front yard here, you know, for shade. And these old lilac bushes, some of these, I'm sure it was here at the time, but there's a nice setting for a house, and a nice sunny spot here on the creek. You could raise a good garden, and some of those years we had a lot more water in the creek than they had this year, and it was pretty nice. And it was kind of a flat spot here. The barn was right out here on the other side of the road, and here's the old road across the creek right here, and where it comes from up there on the edge of that field on the right-hand side on the second line, telegraph for the power line comes through about on the second line, and the road followed the second line. And they came down and made a turn and across the bridge down here, and came up, got back on the line again, and went up here to about a quarter mile from the section corner across the creek. And then they wound around over to the west and out. They use those draws and come out on top of the hill and over through the country, going north up to Fruitland and Hunters. And this old man Sachs that I started to tell you about a little while ago, he was in Colville, and he invited Dad and I into this restaurant, and he said, I want to talk to you. So we went in there, and he said, you know, the first time I came to Fruitland, he said, was when I first came out here from the Middle West. And I had never heard of Fruitland or anything. He says, and I was in Spokane, and I saw an ad in the paper where they needed a school teacher. And he said, I was young, and I had taught school, and he said I was qualified for whatever they needed. And of course, in those days, as soon as you graduated from the 8th grade, you was qualified to teach grade school, and they did that out to Davenport. Mother said there was a lot of some of the girls that graduated there that immediately after they got their certificate, they went right in and got a job teaching, and they were good teachers too. But this old man Sachs, he'd been in the Middle West, and he saw this ad in the paper where they needed a school teacher out at Fruitland, and he didn't know where Fruitland was or anything, but he answered the ad, and he got in touch with them, and they said, come on out, and we'll interview you, and you can apply for the job, or finalize the contract. So he said, I took a freight wagon to Davenport. And by freight, it took 2 days from Spokane Falls, it was still probably called Spokane Falls, to Davenport. Well, when Teddy Roosevelt was president in 1904, my folks was married in 1904, and they went to Spokane in 1904 and to see Teddy Roosevelt, and he spoke on a platform, and on one of the streets downtown, there was everybody came out. They said there was 25,000 people in Spokane, probably on the streets, I figured, and everybody was there in Spokane at that time in 1904. But this is before that, you know. This is before 1890s. At Fruitland, when they advertised for this teacher, because Fruitland wasn't hardly anything there then, and Hunter's was just above Fruitland, was first thought of when Jim Hunter and Bert Hunter came into the country, and one of them homesteaded where the town of Hunters is, and that was 1880. So Fruitland, about that time, came into being, because Fruitland was established first by another fellow from the Middle West called Moses Peltier, and he was a businessman, and he started a store and a post office, and called it Fruitland because along the river they had more chance to raising fruit, and he started in a mercantile business with $50 worth of inventory in bolts of cloth and scissors and thread and any dry goods and anything like that, maybe some flour and sugar and things that way that they hauled up there that he could sell. So I don't know what year it was, but Moses Peltier was there, and he started that in a log cabin, and he peddled in a light delivery wagon also with $50 worth of inventory. And later on, he built a nice store with warehouses on the side, and with a balcony inside with a mezzanine floor, and a hall above there, a dance hall. And Fruitland after 1893, from 1884, where there's nothing in Davenport, and the only place they could trade was Spokane Falls or Sprague, to 1893, 10 years later roughly, there was a community. Davenport was established, a going town, and the mines up here had been established by the wheat farmers, younger people, sons and things that had come out of the wheat country. And when wheat was 15 cents a bushel in 1893, and all of them left the country and went prospecting, and they found the Deer Trail mine and the Deer Trail mines in Cleveland. And Dad had been in Montana earlier, with his stepbrother, who was 10 years older than him, and he was born in 1868. And his stepbrother had done a lot of prospecting in the Southwest, and Dad had found a place in Montana where they sacked $40,000 worth of silver ore right off the top of the ground and got beat out of it. So his excitement was high, and he came up here and got a claim with another fellow called Wilbur Yarwood from Harrington that was given up on wheat farming at the time, and Dad had harvested out there in 1893 and till Christmas, with Ellick Fields and Muley Nichols that had 19 quarter sections of wheat between them, and they harvested for everybody on the side with a big steam thresher, and till Christmas out of stacks, grain stacks. And Dad was forker on this job, and there was 6 inches of snow Christmas morning, and they shut it down till spring, and then they throw the top of the stack off and thrash the rest of it in the spring. But so disheartened by 15-cent wheat, all these people come north, and that was, I think, shortly earlier in the year when they came north prospecting, and Dad had this partner, Wilbur Yarwood, and they went to Cleveland. Was the first excitement where they had made a strike of riches, and they got a claim, him and Wilbur Yarwood, up on the Cleveland, and it was in between, sandwiched in between a 3-cornered piece. They called it a flat iron claim, flat iron shape, down in the bottom of the canyon. Built a cabin on it and left it because they'll say we'll be a lifetime here before we'll know whether it's any good or not. So they left that, and Wilbur Yarwood came down a deer trail, and that was 1893. And he got one of the first locations next to the elephant claim. They called it, he called his the legal tender. He took out 500,000 when silver was about 60 or 65 cents an ounce, and the elephant had a crew, and their crew consisted of 115 men, where everything was handwork, pick and shovel, and hand drilling and blasting, and they shipped. There were 7 different shipping outfits that shipped for about 10 years straight, from 1893 to 1903, when silver went to 47 cents, and caused a panic in the silver mines, but and everything shut down. But this old road came into existence just by usage. An old man Sachs says it went by freight team to Davenport. It'd take 2 days to go to Davenport and 2 days to come up to Fruitland. One day stop about halfway from Spokane to Davenport, out there by Reardon someplace, and one day stop at the river, and the next day come on, because a freight team is about 2 miles per hour, more or less, hauling freight over those old muddy or bad roads.
And that was
either
right
by
through.
sled or wagon.
That's right through this country.
That road came right down the section line here and wound around down that hill and come across a bridge here and up through the country. And old man Sachs says, he said, we rode a freight wagon through there and on up to Fruitland, and he said the driver stopped. He said, and there was a cabin there, or two, just a cabin. And he called out Fruitland. He said, I looked around. He said, I thought there was a settlement here. And he said, this is it. So he said, I unloaded my suitcases or trunk or whatever. Those old timers usually had a trunk. But anyway, he said, we unloaded our things there and Pelcher's store. So I found out that the school was up Fruitland Valley. You have to go up the creek. That was Alder Creek. Go up the creek about say a mile and a half from the store, about a mile east up the creek, and there was homesteads along the creek at that time. The McLeans, and there was another fellow called Old Bill Hughes, Clubfoot Bill. He had a clubfoot, and he had a part Indian wife. And then there was McGarry's, and a few of these people that were, you know, wanted to go to school. And McLean's had a big family, and Pelcher had his nephew there, Wilfred, in McLean's, and I can't think of all the people that was here at the time, but there was about 10 or the most maybe 12 pupils, and they were anywhere in their learning from first grade to learning how to read to mastering a little bit more in writing ability, and they taught penmanship in those days, and their arithmetic, which they figured, some people figured out all you needed was reading and writing and arithmetic, and but they also at that time they had other activities, you know, like they taught a little music. They had in the schools they had a little singing, and they sang songs. We sang songs up here every morning when I was starting in the first grade. Sang songs every morning, and they would be like the little brown church in the Wildwood, and patriotic songs, My Country 'Tis of Thee, and Star Spangled Banner once in a while, and they were both sort of patriotic songs, and then other songs, and we did that every morning to get the kids in the right frame of mind and get us all in unison. And then we'd have penmanship in the morning too, maybe after about 11 o'clock or something. We'd had penmanship every morning, and we were drilled down there on the ability to write decently, and we had that, and then they had all the rest of the subjects. And when I remember when I wasn't doing something else, I liked to listen in on what was going on in the other classes. Or the teacher would have us little kids up the blackboard, and we'd draw our own cartoons of little trucks climbing hills and going down hills, and draw our own trucks and use our imagination, and they would be making little low sounds to themselves, and amusing all the rest of the kids with their imagination and drawing on the blackboard.
And that was right up at that school.
Right up here at the Buchanan School. But when old man Sachs had us go in, and he said the driver called out Mrs. Fruitland. He said, I thought there was a settlement here. He said, where? I thought there was some people. And he said, well, here's some settlers up there. They got some kids to go to school. So we went up there and talked to the people up there, and they said, yes, we got some kids, and so-and-so had got kids. And some of those boys were 18 years old that was still learning, see. They still was interested in learning how to survive in life. So he said I took the job, and I stayed with Clubfoot Bill. It was about a half a mile from the school, about half a mile, well, half, three-quarters mile out of Fruitland, east, up the creek, up Walker Creek. So he said it was a nice, real nice house for the times, and they had well, like all the rest of the old houses, they had a dining room and a kitchen and a pantry, you know, maybe a front room. But they said we had a dining room and a kitchen. And he said, and Mrs. Hughes, she was just serving breakfast, and he said we had just sat down at the table to eat breakfast when we saw the road came right up the creek, and there was a little flat spot, and then the little sharp slope down to the creek where the road had they'd traveled, went up. So we looked out there, and they said there was about 20 men coming up over that little rise, armed with shotguns and sidearms and everything. He said, and it was a sheriff's posse from Davenport. And they had been keeping on that ranch the stolen horses that the horse thieves had left there for a period of time, like a day or two or overnight, till some of the rest of they would move them on to the next location up in the in the hills between the Columbia River Valley, the Columbia River being right west a little bit, about 2 miles west of 2 or 3 miles west of Fruitland, and this road went right up the river. See? And the Columbia River Valley, or Columbia Valley, over across the mountains, Huckleberry Range, over into the valley, the Colville Valley, which was north of Spokane. The drainage from Springdale or Deer Park, out there someplace is a high spot, where the drainage all runs down to the Spokane River, and then the rest of it runs north up through the Colville Valley, up in the Colville River, up and around over to Kettle Falls, to Colville and over to Kettle Falls, and the Colville River dumps into the Columbia. But anyway, they would take them across the mountains. Through the mountains was about 10, 12 miles to get on the other side into the other valley, the Huckleberry Range, and it divides Stevens County. And then they would take them on, move them on to mining camps and different locations where they could sell those horses. And the horse thieves would steal the horses, good horses, from the settlers out in the Davenport country, and bring them north and sell them. And the sheriff's posse was after these horse thieves, and they kept the stolen livestock at this Bill Hughes's ranch. And Bill Hughes, he was an old timer, and when Mrs. Hughes got excited about it, he says, "Never mind, Ma." And he had 2 bandoliers full of cartridges and 6 shooters hanging on the wall. He buckled on those guns and stepped out on the front porch, and he says, "All right, boys, come on." He said every one of them turned around and went down over the hill. And he said they didn't see any more of them that day. But a little later on, there was a sheriff's posse from Davenport, consisting of the sheriff, I'm not sure, and they had a couple of deputies. There was 3 or 4 in the sheriff's posse that caught those horse thieves right behind them. They caught them almost red-handed, and they followed them up, and that one morning they met at this corral where they had these horses or something, and they had a shootout in this corral where the sheriff deputy was shot and died, and I don't know, it seemed like there's 2 of those of the sheriff's posse died, I don't know, from the effects of it. And then on the other side, there was one got wounded in the leg. That run around the hill and hid in a straw stack, and the people who were sympathetic toward him carried him food and water over there, and he got gangrene and died in a week. And there was another one died directly on the grounds from gunshot wounds, and he was buried up in a fence corner, adjacent fence corner of the old Bill Hughes's ranch. And then it was just the adjoining property of old Bill Hughes.
Well, I hope you liked Frank's narration of what it was like back around this area from the 1890s to the current day. Frank was a good man, good friend, and he had a way with animals. I'm going to leave you with one last little bit. See if you can pick him out in this last picture I've got. If you do, you get an award. Okay, thanks for watching the video. Bye.